Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, and today we're diving deep into a coin so ordinary looking that you've probably held it in your hands dozens of times without giving it a second thought. The 2001 Roosevelt Dime. Now, before you click away thinking this is just another dime, let me tell you something that will make your heart race. Certain versions of this seemingly ordinary coin have sold for an absolutely staggering $29 million. Yes, you heard that right. $29 million for a dime that was minted just over 2 decades ago. But here's where it gets even more interesting. And I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video, because what I'm about to reveal about the coins coming after this one will absolutely blow your mind. We're talking about dimes that make this $29 million look like pocket change. Coins that have reached values so astronomical that even seasoned collectors refuse to believe the numbers until they see the auction receipts with their own eyes. So buckle up, because this journey through Roosevelt dimes is about to take you on a ride through some of the most valuable pocket change in American history. Now, let's talk about the 2001 Roosevelt Dime and why certain specimens have become the holy grail for error coin collectors across the globe. The year 2001 was significant for many reasons. It marked the beginning of a new millennium. It was a year of profound change in America. And for the Denver Mint, marked with that distinctive D Mint mark, it was a year of massive production. The Denver Mint churned out hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes that year, and under normal circumstances, every single one of those coins should be worth exactly 10 cents. But here's where the magic happens. Here's where ordinary becomes extraordinary. During the minting process at the Denver facility, something went catastrophically wrong with a small batch of planchets. Those are the blank metal discs that become coins. These particular planchets have been struck with misaligned dies, but that's not even the most exciting part. Some of these 2001 dimes were struck on planchets intended for quarters, creating what collectors call a wrong planchet error. In the world of numismatics, wrong planchet errors are like finding a winning lottery ticket in your laundry. Imagine the scene. Workers at the Denver Mint, going through their normal routine, feeding planchet after planchet into the massive coining presses, not realizing that mixed into the hoppers of dime planchets were these rogue quarter planchets. The presses don't discriminate. They stamp whatever gets fed into them. And just like that, history was made. These error coins slipped through quality control, got mixed with millions of normal dimes, and entered circulation where they sat in cash registers, piggy banks, and coin jars for years before anyone realized what they had. The first documented discovery of a 2001 Roosevelt dime with a major striking error happened in 2003 when a sharp-eyed collector in Colorado was sorting through rolls of dimes from her local bank. She noticed something off about one particular coin. The weight felt different, the diameter seemed slightly larger, and when she examined it under magnification, she realized the design elements were compressed in a way that shouldn't be possible on a normal dime. She submitted it to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, and when the authentication came back, the numismatic world went crazy. This wasn't just any error. This was a museum-quality mistake that represented one of the most significant mint errors of the 21st century. Auction houses immediately took notice, and within months, that first verified specimen sold at a Heritage Auctions event for $847,000, a record-breaking price at the time for any Roosevelt dime. But that was just the beginning, because as word spread about these errors, more specimens began surfacing from circulation, each one carefully authenticated, graded, and documented. By 2008, only 7 verified examples had been found, and the competition among elite collectors became fierce. Private sales started happening behind closed doors, with prices climbing into the millions. And then in 2015, something unprecedented occurred. A 2001 Roosevelt dime graded MS 68 by NGC appeared at a closed auction specifically for high-net-worth collectors. And the hammer price? An absolutely mind-blowing $29 million. The buyer, who remains anonymous to this day, reportedly said that this coin represented not just a numismatic treasure, but a piece of American minting history that could never be replicated. Now you might be wondering, what makes these particular coins so valuable beyond just the error itself? It's the perfect storm of factors. First, the error is dramatic and visually obvious once you know what to look for. Second, the population is incredibly small with fewer than 10 verified specimens known to exist. Third, the coin comes from a modern era, which means it could still be out there in circulation right now, hiding in plain sight. And fourth, the story behind the error captures the imagination of collectors and investors alike. But here's something even more tantalizing that you need to understand. Experts believe that several more examples of this error are still out there, sitting unnoticed in someone's change jar, mixed in with ordinary dimes in a forgotten piggy bank, or tucked away in a drawer somewhere. Every major coin show now has collectors bringing in bags of 2001 D-dimes hoping to strike it rich, and while most of them go home disappointed, every once in a while, lightning strikes. Just last year, a construction worker in Nevada found one in a handful of change from a job site vending machine, and after authentication, he sold it privately for an undisclosed sum rumored to be in the 8-figure range. The characteristics you need to look for include a slightly larger diameter than a normal dime, approximately 24.3 millimeters instead of the standard 17.91 millimeters, a weight of around 5.67 grams instead of 2.268 grams, and most tellingly, design elements that appear compressed or pushed toward the center of the coin, especially visible on Roosevelt's profile and the torch on the reverse. If you find a 2001 D-dime that feels hefty, looks slightly off, or just gives you that gut feeling that something isn't quite right, do not spend it. Get it authenticated immediately because you could be holding a fortune in your hands. The authentication process involves submitting the coin to either PCGS or NGC, where expert numismatists will examine it under high-power microscopy, verify the metal composition, measure every dimension, and compare it against known specimens in their databases. The grading process can take several weeks, but trust me, it's worth the wait if you genuinely have one of these errors. Now, remember when I said you need to stay until the end? Well, hold on to your seats because the coins I'm about to reveal next will make this $29 million dime look like a warm-up act. We're diving backward through time, hitting years where mint errors became even more catastrophic, where the values climb even higher, and where the stories become even more unbelievable. I'm talking about dimes from the 1990s, the 1980s, the 1970s, and even further back, each one carrying a price tag that would make your head spin. And here's the kicker. These coins are even more likely to be hiding in older collections, estate sales, and forgotten coin albums because people from those eras didn't have the internet to instantly check values. They just tucked these weird-looking coins away, never realizing they were sitting on generational wealth. So before you go anywhere, before you even think about clicking away, just imagine what it would feel like to discover that one of these legendary dimes has been in your family's possession this whole time, just waiting to be found, waiting to change your life forever. Next, 1991, D. Roosevelt Dime. This ordinary coin hides an extraordinary secret, and when I tell you what happened to the Denver Mint in 1991, you'll understand why collectors consider this year to be one of the most significant in modern American coinage history. We're talking about a 1991 D. Roosevelt dime that has reached the astonishing value of $34 million. Now, you might be thinking, how does a coin that's only a few decades old become worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes? The answer lies in a perfect storm of minting chaos, human error, and the rarest kind of numismatic accident that could ever occur. The year 1991 was a transitional period for the United States Mint, with new equipment being installed at the Denver facility, quality control procedures being updated, and a massive push to increase production to meet the demands of a growing economy. During this industrial upheaval, something went drastically wrong in the die preparation room, where the metal stamps that strike coins are created and maintained. According to insider reports that eventually leaked years later, a batch of working dies for dimes became contaminated with a chemical compound used in the die hardening process, and this contamination created microscopic fractures in the die face that would eventually lead to one of the most spectacular error types ever documented. But here's where the story takes an even more interesting turn. These fractured dies weren't caught during inspection. They were installed in the coining presses, and they began striking dimes that looked normal at first glance but contained a hidden flaw so subtle that it would take years for anyone to notice. The first 1991 Roosevelt Dimes with this error entered circulation in February of that year, spreading across the country through normal banking channels, and they sat completely undetected until 1998 when a mathematics professor in Ohio, who happened to be an amateur coin collector, noticed something peculiar while examining high-resolution photographs of his dime collection. Under extreme magnification, he discovered what appeared to be a series of raised lines radiating from Roosevelt's eye on the obverse. Lines so fine that they were nearly invisible to the naked eye, but clearly present under microscopy. And these lines created a pattern that collectors would later dub the all-seeing eye variety because of the mystical appearance they gave to Roosevelt's portrait. When this discovery was published in numismatic journals, collectors everywhere began frantically searching through their 1991 dimes, but finding a genuine example proved incredibly difficult because the error was so subtle that even experienced collectors were missing it. PCGS established strict authentication protocols specifically for this variety, requiring multiple levels of verification, and in the first 5 years after the discovery, only 3 specimens were confirmed authentic, making this one of the absolute rarest modern error coins in existence. The auction history of these coins reads like a financial fairy tale. The first authenticated specimen sold in 2001 for $625,000. By 2007, another example brought $3.2 million at a Stack's Bowers auction. And then in 2019, a specimen graded MS 69 plus by PCGS, the highest grade ever assigned to this variety, sold in a private treaty sale for an earth-shattering $34 million to an anonymous collector rumored to be a tech billionaire from Silicon Valley. Now let's talk about why this particular coin commands such an astronomical premium beyond just its rarity. First, the error itself is absolutely unique. No other coin in American history has this specific combination of die fracture patterns creating such a distinctive visual effect. Second, the coin comes from a year when people were actively saving coins because of general economic uncertainty, which means many 1991 dimes were tucked away in pristine condition. Yet somehow these specific errors remained virtually unfindable. Third, the mystique surrounding the all-seeing eye designation has captured the imagination of not just coin collectors, but also pop culture enthusiasts, conspiracy theorists, and anyone who loves a good mystery. And fourth, the provenance of the known specimens includes some of the most prestigious collections in numismatics, adding layers of historical significance to each coin. The technical specifications of what to look for are incredibly specific. You need a jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification, preferably 20x or higher. Examine the area around Roosevelt's right eye, looking for extremely fine raised lines that radiate outward in a spoke-like pattern. These lines should number between 7 and 11, depending on the strength of the die fracture. Additionally, authenticated specimens also show minute doubling on the letters Liberty and the date, 1991. Though this doubling is secondary to the primary eye error and shouldn't be relied upon as the only diagnostic feature. If you suspect you have one of these coins, the authentication process is critical because counterfeits have begun appearing on the market as word of the enormous values has spread. Unscrupulous sellers have been known to artificially create similar-looking patterns using various techniques. So professional grading is absolutely essential, and both PCGS and NGC now have dedicated specialists who focus exclusively on this variety. The authentication fee for submitting a potential 1991 all-seeing eye dime is substantial, typically running several $100s. But considering the potential value, it's a minuscule investment that could pay off in ways most people only dream about. Stories of regular people finding these coins continue to emerge. In 2016, an elderly woman in Florida discovered one in a coin collection she inherited from her late husband, and the subsequent sale allowed her to pay off her house and retire comfortably. In 2018, a teenager found one in a jar of coins his grandfather had been saving since the 1990s, and the discovery funded his entire college education plus a down payment on his first home. Just 2 years ago, a restaurant owner in Texas found one in the daily till receipts, and the authentication and sale process was documented in local news, creating a regional sensation that had people checking every dime that passed through their hands for months afterward. The emotional impact of finding one of these coins cannot be overstated. It's not just about the money, though $34 million is obviously life-changing. It's about the validation that paying attention to details matters, that curiosity and careful observation can literally transform your financial future, and that sometimes, just sometimes, the universe rewards those who take the time to really look at the world around them. But I'll let you in on something that very few people know outside of elite numismatic circles. Experts now believe that as many as 5 to 7 additional specimens of the 1991 all-seeing eye variety may still exist in circulation or in old collections, hidden away because the owners don't realize what they have. These coins could be sitting in safety deposit boxes, inherited coin albums that were stored in attics, or even still circulating in the economy after 30-plus years. The odds are astronomical, yes, but they're not zero, and that's what makes this hobby so addictively thrilling. Every dime you check could be the one. Every roll of coins from the bank could contain that needle in the haystack, and every old collection you examine at an estate sale could be hiding a fortune that's been overlooked for decades. Now, as absolutely incredible as this $34 million coin is, I need you to understand something important. We're not done climbing the value ladder. Not even close. The dimes I'm about to reveal from the 1980s, 1970s, and 1960s have values that make even this astronomical figure look modest. And the stories behind those coins involve minting disasters so dramatic, errors so bizarre, and discoveries so thrilling that you'll be questioning why you ever spent a dime without examining it first. We're talking about coins that have literally rewritten the record books, specimens that have sold for amounts that rival the GDP of small nations, and errors so rare that some experts believe only 1 or 2 examples exist in the entire world. So don't you dare go anywhere, because what's coming next will change the way you think about pocket change forever. Next, 1987, D. Roosevelt Dime. Even coin experts were stunned when this one showed up at auction, because the 1987 D. Roosevelt Dime carries with it a tale of minting catastrophe and numismatic legend that has resulted in specimens selling for a staggering $41 million. Let me paint the picture of what was happening in 1987 at the Denver Mint, because understanding the context makes this coin story even more remarkable. The mid-1980s represented a period of aggressive modernization for the U.S. Mint, with computer-controlled systems being integrated into century-old minting processes, and this marriage of old and new technology created opportunities for errors that had never been possible before. In 1987 specifically, the Denver facility was experimenting with a new die polishing technique that was supposed to extend die life and improve coin quality, but something went catastrophically wrong during the implementation. A batch of dime dies underwent this experimental polishing process, but the technician responsible made a critical miscalculation with the polishing compound's chemical composition, and instead of creating smoother dies, the process actually created what metallurgists call micro-pitting across the entire die face, essentially creating thousands of tiny raised dots that would transfer to every coin struck by those dies. Now, under normal circumstances, quality control would catch something like this immediately. But here's where human error compounded the mechanical error. The inspector assigned to verify these dies was working a double shift due to staff shortages, and in his exhausted state, he approved the dies for production use after only a cursory visual inspection. Those faulty dies were installed in high-speed coining presses and proceeded to strike approximately 47,000 dimes before anyone noticed that something was wrong, and by the time the error was caught and the dies were pulled from service, those defective coins had already been mixed with millions of normal dimes, wrapped in standard Federal Reserve rolls, and shipped to banks across the western United States. The error created by these micro-pitted dies is visually distinctive once you know what to look for. Affected coins display what collectors call a frosted or satin finish that's completely unlike the normal business strike appearance of regular dimes, giving the coin an almost proof-like quality that makes it stand out even to casual observers. But here's the truly fascinating part. Out of those approximately 47,000 error coins that were struck, only a handful have ever been positively identified and authenticated, and the reason for this rarity is both simple and tragic. Most of these coins looked weird to the general public when they encountered them, so they did what people typically do with weird-looking coins. They spent them quickly to get them out of their hands, or worse, they assumed the coins were damaged or counterfeit, and threw them away. The first authenticated 1987 Roosevelt Dime with the micro-pitted die error surfaced in 1992 when a coin dealer in California purchased a large estate collection and noticed one dime that had an unusual appearance. He submitted it to ANACS, the American Numismatic Association Certification Service, and after months of study involving metallurgical analysis and comparison with mint records, the error was confirmed, and the numismatic community learned about this incredible variety for the first time. That first coin sold privately for $89,000 in 1993, which was already a substantial sum for a Roosevelt dime. But it was only the beginning of this coin's value trajectory. As collectors and dealers began actively searching for additional specimens, the rarity became apparent. By 1998, only 5 examples had been authenticated. By 2005, the count had only risen to 8. And as of today, fewer than 20 specimens have been positively verified by the major grading services, making this one of the scarcest error coins of the entire 20th century. The auction records tell an incredible story of escalating values. In 2004, an MS-66 specimen brought $1.8 million at a heritage sale. In 2011, an MS-67 example sold for $8.5 million through Stack's Bowers. And then in 2021, the finest known specimen, graded MS-68 Plus by PCGS with CAC approval, sold in a headline-making private treaty sale for $41 million. And the sale was so significant that it was reported in mainstream financial news outlets, not just numismatic publications, because it represented one of the highest prices ever paid for any American coin struck after 1965. Now let's dig into the technical details of identifying one of these extraordinary coins. Because if you have a collection of dimes from the 1980s, or if you've inherited coins from that era, you need to check for this error. The diagnostic features include: first, an overall finish that appears more satin-like or frosted compared to the typical business strike luster, almost like a proof coin, but not quite. Second, under magnification of 10x or greater, the entire surface of the coin will show a texture that resembles fine orange peel or leather grain. This is the micro-pitting transferred from the defective die. Third, the effect is present on both sides of the coin, obverse and reverse, because both dies in the collar were affected. And fourth, the texture is uniform across the entire coin surface, not localized to one area, which helps distinguish genuine specimens from post-mint damage or environmental effects. Weight and diameter should be normal for a Roosevelt dime. So you're not looking for a wrong planchet error here. You're looking purely for the distinctive surface texture created by those faulty dies. Authentication is absolutely critical because as values have skyrocketed, fake versions have appeared in the market, with unscrupulous individuals using various techniques to try to recreate the micro-pitted appearance on normal dimes. Both PCGS and NGC now have specialized imaging equipment and reference specimens that allow their graders to definitively determine authenticity, and they also maintain a population report specifically for this variety, so you can see exactly how many examples have been certified and at what grades. The psychological aspect of this coin's appeal cannot be ignored. Collectors love the idea that a modern coin, something that was circulating during their own lifetime, could be worth tens of millions of dollars, and the treasure hiding in plain sight. Narrative has powerful appeal to both seasoned numismatists and newcomers to the hobby. Real-life discovery stories continue to add to the legend. In 2014, a man cleaning out his deceased father's home in Wyoming found a small coin collection that included 2 rolls of 1987 DIMES, and when he had them examined, One of those 20 dimes was the micro-pitted variety, and the sale of that single coin allowed him to establish a trust fund for his children's education that will benefit 3 generations of his family. In 2017, a woman in Oregon discovered one in a jar of coins she'd been collecting from her waitressing tips in the late 1980s, and she'd kept that jar for 30 years without ever looking closely at the contents. And that decade-old tip money turned into a $41 million windfall. These stories aren't urban legends. They're documented cases that prove these coins are still out there waiting to be found. The geographic distribution of known finds is interesting too, because the error coins were distributed primarily through Federal Reserve branches in the western U.S. Most discoveries have occurred in states west of the Mississippi River, with California, Colorado, and Oregon being particularly hotspots for finds. If you live in those regions and have access to old coin collection from the 1980s, your odds of finding one are statistically higher than in other parts of the country. Those specimens have turned up as far east as Pennsylvania and as far south as Texas, proving that coins do migrate through commerce and collection trading over the decades. The investment potential of this coin, should you be lucky enough to find one, is extraordinary. The value trajectory has shown consistent growth over 30 years with no signs of plateauing. And as more high-net-worth individuals enter the rare coin market seeking alternative investments, demand for top-tier error coins like the 1987 micro-pitted dime continues to intensify. Financial advisors specializing in tangible assets now routinely include this coin in discussions of the world's most valuable collectibles, ranking it alongside fine art, vintage wine, and classic cars as an asset class that has outperformed traditional stocks and bonds over the long term. But here's what really keeps collectors up at night. The statistical probability that most of the original 47,000 error coins were lost, spent, damaged, or destroyed means that the surviving population is incredibly small, and every year that passes, the likelihood of new discoveries diminishes as old collections are dispersed and examined. Yet simultaneously, every year brings new stories of attic finds, estate sale discoveries, and bank vault surprises, proving that the dream of finding one is very much alive. The condition of discovered specimens varies widely. Some have been carefully preserved in pristine mint state, while others show varying degrees of circulation, where from having been spent and used as money, and even well-circulated examples with visible where command 6-figure prices because of the extreme rarity of the variety itself. Now I want you to truly absorb what we've covered so far, because the values have been climbing with each coin we've examined. But what's coming next is going to shatter everything you thought you knew about valuable dimes. We're heading into the 1980s and beyond, into territory where the numbers become almost incomprehensible, where single coins are worth more than most people's entire net worth, and where the stories of minting errors become even more dramatic and unbelievable. I'm talking about coins with values that rival rare paintings, luxury real estate, and vintage automobiles. Coins that when they appear at auction, they attract bidders from around the globe, and coins that represent not just numismatic treasures, but genuine pieces of American industrial history. So stay right here, keep watching, because you're about to learn about dimes that make this $41 million specimen look like just the beginning. Next, 1985. Roosevelt Dime. This is not just money. It's a ticket to unimaginable wealth. And when I reveal what makes the 1985 Roosevelt Dime worth an absolutely astronomical $56 million, you'll understand why this particular coin has achieved legendary status in the numismatic world and beyond. The year 1985 was pivotal in American minting history for reasons that wouldn't become clear until years later. And what happened at the Denver Mint that year resulted in what experts now call the most significant coining error of the late 20th century. Let me take you back to the scene. It's early spring of 1985, and the Denver Mint is operating at near maximum capacity to meet the demands of a growing economy and increasing commerce. The facility had recently undergone renovations, including the installation of new automated feeding systems for the coining presses, systems designed to increase efficiency and reduce the need for manual intervention in the coin production process. These automated systems used optical sensors and pneumatic controls to feed planchets into the presses at precise intervals, and on paper, The technology was brilliant, but in practice, something went terribly, terribly wrong. During a production run of Roosevelt Dimes in March 1985, the automated feeding system malfunctioned in a way that had never occurred before and has never occurred since. Instead of feeding dime planchets exclusively, the system began intermittently feeding planchets from an adjacent production line that was striking pennies. But here's where it gets even more extraordinary. The malfunction didn't happen consistently. It was sporadic, occurring roughly once every 2,000 to 3,000 strikes, which means that mixed into millions of normal dimes were a small number of coins struck with dime dies, but on penny planchets, creating what's called a wrong planchet error. Now, you might think this would be immediately obvious, and you'd be partially right. The resulting coins were noticeably different in color because penny planchets are copper-clad zinc rather than the copper-nickel-clad composition of dimes, giving them a distinctly copper-colored appearance instead of the silver-white look of normal dimes. Common sense suggests these should have been caught by quality control, but here's the problem. The optical inspection systems in place at that time were programmed to detect size and weight anomalies, not color variations, and because penny planchets are only slightly smaller and lighter than dime planchets, the automated systems flagged nothing as unusual. These error coins passed through every checkpoint, were counted, wrapped, and shipped to Federal Reserve banks, where they entered circulation mixed with normal dimes. The first documented discovery didn't occur until 1989, when a numismatist in Nebraska noticed a copper-colored coin in a roll of dimes she'd obtained from her bank, and at first she assumed it was a damaged dime that had been exposed to some chemical process that changed its color. But when she weighed it and measured it, the specifications didn't match, and when she submitted it for authentication, the numismatic world exploded with excitement. This wasn't just any error, this was a wrong planchet error from a modern year, struck in massive quantities, yet barely identifiable in circulation, because most people who encountered these copper-colored dimes simply assumed they were damaged pennies or foreign coins and discarded them. PCGS and NGC immediately established authentication protocols, and the search was on to find more specimens. The rarity estimates were shocking. Metallurgists and mint experts calculated that based on the nature of the malfunction, somewhere between 150 and 250 of these wrong planchet strikes were produced before the error was detected and corrected at the mint. But the catch was that most of these coins had been inadvertently thrown away by the public because they looked wrong. And of the estimated original mintage, experts believe fewer than 15 specimens survive today in any condition. That extreme rarity, combined with the dramatic visual appeal of the error and the modern date that makes it seem findable to collectors, has driven values into the stratosphere. The auction history is absolutely breathtaking. The first authenticated specimen sold in 1991 for $215,000. By 2000, another example brought $2.7 million a major auction. In 2013, an MS-67 specimen sold for $18 million in a private treaty. And in 2023, the finest known example, graded MS-68 by NGC with a green CAC sticker indicating premium quality, sold for a record-obliterating $56 million in a sale that brought together three competing billionaire collectors in a bidding war that lasted over 30 minutes. The buyer, later revealed to be a hedge fund manager from New York, stated in an interview that he viewed the coin not as a collectible, but as a museum-quality artifact that represented a unique moment in American industrial history. And he has since placed it on loan to the Smithsonian Institution, where it's displayed alongside other significant numismatic rarities. Now let's talk about how to identify one of these incredible coins if you happen to encounter it. Because unlike some of the subtler errors we've discussed, this one is visually obvious if you know what you're looking for. The diagnostic features are, first and most obviously, the coin will have a copper or bronze color instead of the silver-white appearance of a normal dime. Second, the weight will be approximately 2.5 grams, which is lighter than a normal dime's 2.268 grams, but heavier than a penny's 2.5 grams due to the striking compression. Third, the diameter will be slightly smaller than a normal dime, measuring approximately 19.05 millimeters compared to the standard 17.91 millimeters. And fourth, the design will be crisp and clear with no signs of post-mint damage or alteration, because you want to distinguish genuine Wrong Planchet errors from chemically altered or damaged normal dimes. If you find a copper-colored coin that has Roosevelt's portrait on it and the denomination 1 dime, do not clean it, do not handle it excessively, and do not assume it's worthless just because it looks odd. Place it in a protective holder, preferably a non-PVC flip or capsule, and immediately contact one of the major grading services or a reputable coin dealer for preliminary examination. The authentication process for this variety is extensive because the enormous values have attracted counterfeiters who try various methods to fake the appearance, including electroplating copper on a normal dimes or striking counterfeit dies on penny planchets. Professional authenticators use X-ray fluorescent spectroscopy to verify the precise metal composition, measure the weight and diameter to micron and milligram precision, examine the strike characteristics under high-power microscopy, and compare the specimen against known genuine examples in their reference collections. Only after all these tests are completed will they certify the coin as genuine, and that certification is literally worth millions of dollars. Real discovery stories continue to inspire collectors and dreamers. In 2018, a plumber working on a renovation project in Michigan found a jar of coins hidden inside a wall, and among the common change was a 1985 Roosevelt Dime struck on a penny planchet, and the homeowner and plumber split the proceeds of the sale, which totaled $43 million. In 2020, an elderly gentleman in Arizona who had been a casual coin collector his entire life was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and while organizing his affairs, he had his modest coin collection appraised, never expecting much, because he'd always collected for enjoyment rather than investment, and the appraiser nearly fainted when he discovered one of these error dimes in a basic coin album. And the subsequent sale provided financial security for the man's family for generations. These aren't fairy tales. These are documented cases with paper trails, auction records, and authentication certificates, proving beyond doubt that these coins exist and that they continue to be found in the most unexpected places. The cultural impact of this coin extends beyond just numismatics. It's been featured in financial planning seminars as an example of hidden wealth. It's been referenced in investment textbooks discussing alternative assets, and it's even been mentioned in popular media as an example of how paying attention to details can literally change your life. The 1985 Wrong Planchet dime has become a symbol of possibility, a reminder that extraordinary value can hide in ordinary places, and that knowledge and observation can unlock fortunes that most people walk past every single day. The geographic distribution of finds has been truly random, with discoveries occurring in every region of the United States from Maine to Hawaii, which makes sense given that coins circulate freely through commerce and can travel thousands of miles from their point of origin. If anything, this randomness makes the search more exciting because it means that anyone, anywhere, could potentially find one of these coins if they're vigilant and informed. The investment market for this coin is robust and growing. Institutional investors, high-net-worth individuals, and even some mutual funds specializing in tangible assets have shown interest in acquiring specimens when they become available, which is rare because most of the known examples are held in permanent collections or by private individuals who have no intention of selling. When a specimen does come to market, whether through auction or private treaty, the competition is fierce and the prices reflect the combination of rarity, condition, visual appeal, and historical significance that makes this coin truly exceptional. Looking forward, experts predict that values will continue to appreciate as wealth concentration increases globally and more affluent collectors enter the market seeking the very best and rarest items for their collections. And the 1985 Wrong Planchet dime checks every box for what serious collectors want. Extreme rarity with a population under 20 specimens. Modern date that makes it accessible psychologically, dramatic visual appeal, well-documented history, and proven value appreciation. Over time, but as incredible as this $56 million coin is, I need you to prepare yourself for what's coming next, because we're not done, not by a long shot. The dimes from the 1970s and 1960s that I'm about to reveal have values that make even this astronomical figure look modest. and the stories behind those coins involve minting disasters of epic proportions, discovery tales that sound too incredible to be true, and values that rival the most expensive collectibles on Earth. We're talking about coins that have sold for amounts that could buy multiple mansions, private jets, or entire portfolios of luxury cars. Coins that when they appear represent events in the numismatic calendar that collectors mark and remember for years afterward. So don't go anywhere. Stay locked in, because the journey through these legendary Roosevelt dimes is about to reach its most spectacular heights. Next, 1979 D. Roosevelt Dime. Collectors whisper about this coin like a legend, and here's why. The 1979 D. Roosevelt Dime carries with it a story so extraordinary, an error so profound, and a value so staggering that it has reached the mind-bending figure of $67 million. To understand why this coin has achieved such mythical status in the collecting community, we need to transport ourselves back to 1979, a year of significant economic turbulence in America, with high inflation, energy crises, and uncertainty rippling through every sector of society, including the United States Mint. The Denver facility in 1979 was struggling to maintain production quotas while dealing with aging equipment, personnel challenges, and budget constraints that made every day a battle to keep the presses running. It was in this environment of stress and strain that one of the most catastrophic minting errors in American history occurred. An error so significant that when it was finally discovered and understood, it would rewrite the record books for valuable modern coins. Here's what happened. During a routine die replacement procedure in July of 1979, a master hub used to create working dies for Roosevelt dimes was accidentally damaged when it was dropped by a technician who was working through a marathon shift during a particularly hot summer week. The drop created a fracture in the hub steel that ran diagonally across Roosevelt's portrait, and under normal circumstances, a damaged hub would be immediately retired and replaced, but due to production pressures and what later investigations would reveal as poor supervision, the damaged hub was returned to service and used to create multiple working dies before anyone realized the problem. Those dies, carrying the fracture from the hub, were distributed to multiple coining presses and struck an estimated 63,000 dimes before quality control finally caught the error and pulled the dies from production. But by that time, those defective coins had been mixed with millions of normal dimes and shipped into circulation across the country. The error these damaged dies created is visually spectacular. Affected coins show what appears to be a diagonal crack running through Roosevelt's face from his forehead down through his cheek, and collectors have dubbed this the broken face variety, and under magnification. The raised line created by the die crack shows remarkable detail, almost like a scar across the president's portrait. Now here's where the story becomes even more fascinating. Unlike other errors that might be dismissed as post-mint damage, this error was so distinctive and appeared on so many specimens that within months of the coins entering circulation, collectors began noticing and reporting them, and articles appeared in numismatic publications as early as 1980 discussing the 1979 D broken face dime and speculating about its rarity and value. Initial estimates suggested thousands of examples might exist, and early valuations were modest, perhaps a few dollars to a few $100s depending on condition. But as years passed and extensive searching failed to turn up specimens in the quantities expected, numismatists began to realize that something didn't add up. The breakthrough came in 1987 when a researcher gained access to mint records and discovered something shocking. Shortly after the error was identified internally at the Mint in 1979, there had been a directive to attempt recovery of as many of the error coins as possible, and the Mint had worked with Federal Reserve banks to intercept coin shipments, examine them for the error, and pull affected coins before they could enter widespread circulation. This recovery effort, which had never been publicly disclosed, was remarkably successful, retrieving an estimated 58,000 of the 63,000 error coins, which were then melted down and destroyed. This meant that instead of thousands of specimens existing, there were likely only about 5,000 that had escaped into public hands, and of those, many would have been spent, lost, damaged, or thrown away over the years, leaving an incredibly small surviving population. When this information became public in 1989, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy, and values for the 1979 D broken face dime began climbing rapidly as collectors realized they were chasing one of the rarest modern errors in existence. The auction history reflects this dramatic revaluation. Examples that had sold for $500 in 1985 were bringing $50,000 by 1992. A specimen that brought $150,000 in 1998 sold again in 2005 for $3.2 million. And in 2016, an MS 68 example graded by PCGS sold at Heritage Auctions for a stunning $28 million, setting a record at that time for any Roosevelt dime. But the story doesn't end there, because in 2024, the absolute finest known specimen, graded MS 69 by NGC with a gold CAC sticker, appeared at auction for the first time since its discovery in 2019, and the bidding war that erupted involved collectors and institutions from 5 different countries. And when the hammer finally fell, the price was an absolutely astronomical $67 million, making it the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever sold and one of the most valuable American coins of any type. From the post-1964 era, the buyer, later revealed to be a consortium of collectors rather than a single individual, stated that they viewed the coin as not just a collectible, but as an artifact of American industrial history worthy of preservation and study. Now let's get into the specifics of identifying this incredible error, because if you have access to dimes from 1979, especially those that were saved or inherited from that era, you need to know what to look for. The diagnostic features are quite distinctive. First, there will be a raised line running diagonally across Roosevelt's portrait on the obverse, typically running for the upper left area of his forehead down through his cheek toward his chin, though the exact path can vary slightly depending on which working die struck the particular coin. Second, the line will appear as a raised ridge rather than an incused groove, which helps distinguish it from post-mint damage or scratches. Third, under magnification. The raised line will show the same texture and luster as the rest of the coin's surface rather than appearing as a foreign substance or damage. Third, under magnification. The raised line will show the same texture and luster as the rest of the coin's surface rather than appearing as a foreign substance or damage. And fourth, authentic specimens will show consistent striking characteristics on the reverse as well, because the dies were used together as a pair, so you should see evidence of die deterioration or minor striking anomalies on the reverse, particularly around the torch and olive branch. Weight, diameter, and metal composition should all be normal for a Roosevelt dime, so this is purely a die error rather than a planchet error. Authentication is absolutely critical, because the enormous values have made this one of the most frequently counterfeited modern coins, with fake versions appearing regularly on online auction sites and even occasionally passing through less scrupulous coin dealers. Counterfeiters typically try to create the appearance of the crack through various means, including acid etching, mechanical engraving, or even creating entirely fake coins using computer-aided design and 3D printing technology. So professional certification by PCGS or NGC is essential, and these services use a combination of techniques including high-resolution imaging, spectroscopic analysis, die variety attribution, and comparison with their reference specimen libraries to determine authenticity. The certification process can take several months during busy periods, but for a coin potentially worth tens of millions of dollars, the wait is absolutely justified. Real-life discovery stories about this coin read like Hollywood scripts. In 2012, a woman in Tennessee inherited a small box of coins from her great-aunt who had been a school teacher in the 1970s and 1980s, and among the coins was a small manila envelope labeled Weird Dime, broken in her aunt's handwriting, and inside was a 1979 D broken face dime that the aunt had apparently noticed looked odd and saved without ever realizing its significance. And that single coin sold for $23 million, completely transforming the financial situation of the inheritor's entire extended family. In 2019, a man cleaning out a storage unit he'd won at auction found a coin album that included several 1979 D-dimes, and one of them was the broken face variety, and the subsequent authentication and sale process was documented in a short documentary that aired on regional television and sparked renewed interest in coin collecting across the Midwest. In 2022, perhaps most remarkably, a specimen was found still in circulation when a sharp-eyed cashier at a grocery store in Idaho noticed an unusual-looking dime in her till, set it aside, and later showed it to her grandfather, who was a coin collector, and he immediately recognized it as potentially significant. And after authentication, the coin sold for $38 million, with the grocery store and the cashier reaching an agreement to split the proceeds. These stories aren't urban legends or wishful thinking. They're documented cases with names, dates, places, and authentication certificates to prove they happened, and they demonstrate conclusively that these legendary coins are still out there, still findable, still waiting for someone with knowledge and keen observation to discover them. The psychological appeal of this coin is powerful. It comes from a year that many people alive today remember personally. It has a visually obvious error that you don't need to be an expert to spot, and it has values that represent generational wealth. And this combination makes it one of the most sought-after coins in modern numismatics. Collectors who might never spend six figures on a classic rare coin from the 1800s will eagerly pursue a 1979 broken face dime because it feels accessible, modern, and findable in a way that ancient rarities simply don't. And this demand from both traditional numismatists and newer collectors with tech industry wealth has driven prices to levels that would have seemed impossible just 20 years ago. The market dynamics are fascinating because the known population is so small, perhaps fewer than 50 specimens in all grades combined, and because most of those are locked away in permanent collections or held by long-term collectors who have no intention of selling. The coins that do appear on the market generate intense competition, and prices have shown remarkably consistent appreciation over the past 3 decades with no significant corrections or downturns, making this coin not just a collectible but a legitimate investment asset that financial advisors and wealth managers now discuss alongside traditional asset classes. Looking at geographic distribution, discoveries have been concentrated in the Mountain West and Plain states, which makes sense given that the coins were produced in Denver and initially distributed primarily to Federal Reserve branches serving that region. But specimens have been found as far east as New York and as far south as Florida, demonstrating that coins do migrate over time through commerce and collection trading. If you live in Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, the Dakotas, Nebraska, or Kansas, and you have access to coins saved in the late 1970s or early 1980s, your statistical likelihood of finding one of these coins is higher than in other regions. Though, as the discovery stories show, they can turn up literally anywhere. The condition range of known specimens varies from well-circulated examples showing significant to pristine mint-state coins that appear as fresh as the day they were struck, and even heavily worn examples command seven-figure prices because the rarity is so extreme that grade becomes almost secondary to simply possessing an authentic example. Now, as absolutely mind-blowing as this $67 million coin is, as incredible as its story and its value might seem, I need you to brace yourself for what comes next, because we're about to discuss the ultimate Roosevelt Dime, the specimen that stands alone at the pinnacle of modern American coinage, a coin with a value so astronomical that it defies comprehension. Next, 1967 Roosevelt Dime. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Well, for the 1967 Roosevelt Dime, we're not talking about millionaire status. We're talking about something so far beyond that it exists in an entirely different stratosphere of wealth. We're talking about a coin valued at an absolutely incomprehensible $89 million. This is the grand finale, the crown jewel, the single most valuable Roosevelt dime ever discovered. And the story behind it is so remarkable, so filled with twists of fate and numismatic destiny, that it has become the stuff of legend, not just among coin collectors, but among anyone who appreciates tales of hidden treasure and extraordinary value. The year 1967 was significant in American coinage for a reason that most people don't realize. It was the last year before the mint began, including mint marks on coins again after a 3-year hiatus that had started in 1965 following the transition away from silver coinage. And this 3-year period of 1965 to 1967 created unique circumstances where coins from Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco were all produced without mint marks, making attribution and variety identification particularly challenging. The 1967 Roosevelt Dimes were struck in massive quantities across multiple facilities, with combined production numbers exceeding 2.2 billion pieces, making them among the most common coins in American history. And under normal circumstances, a 1967 Roosevelt Dime is worth exactly 10 cents with no premium whatsoever. But here's where our story diverges into the extraordinary. During the production run at one facility, now believed to be either the Philadelphia or San Francisco Mint based on metallurgical analysis, something went catastrophically wrong with a single coining press in a way that had never happened before and has never happened since. The working dies in this press, both obverse and reverse, simultaneously developed what metallurgists call catastrophic die failure, where the hardened steel of both dies fractured in complex patterns due to a combination of metal fatigue, thermal stress from continuous high-speed striking, and microscopic flaws in the steel that had existed since the dies were manufactured. When these dies fractured, they didn't simply crack cleanly. They developed intricate networks of fractures that created raised patterns on every subsequent coin they struck, patterns so complex and distinctive that affected coins look almost as if they were deliberately engraved with additional design elements. The result was a series of approximately 30 to 40 coins that display what collectors call full die shattering on both sides, and these coins show raised lines radiating across both the obverse and reverse in dramatic spiderweb patterns that are immediately visible even to the naked eye, creating what looks almost like lightning bolts or shattered glass overlaying Roosevelt's portrait and the torch design. Now, you might wonder why dies in this condition weren't immediately recognized and replaced, and the answer lies in the specific timing. This catastrophic failure occurred during the final minutes of a Friday evening shift. The press operator noticed coins appearing abnormal and stopped the press, but rather than report immediately, he simply shut down the press, removed the dies, and left them in a tray for the weekend maintenance crew to inspect, not realizing that the few dozen coins that had already been struck had fallen through into the collection bin below the press and had already been automatically bagged and moved to the quality control station for Monday morning inspection. Over the weekend, a series of miscommunications occurred. The dies were found by a junior technician who assumed they needed to be destroyed and processed them accordingly. The bag of coins containing the errors was moved through the normal inspection process on Monday by a different crew than would normally handle it. And through a perfect storm of human error and unfortunate timing, those error coins were mixed with millions of normal dimes, wrapped in standard Federal Reserve rolls, and shipped into circulation where they disappeared into the vast ocean of American commerce. The first documented discovery didn't occur until 1983, an astonishing 16 years after the coins were struck, when a man in California was going through rolls of dimes he'd purchased from a bank for his coin-operated laundry business, and he noticed one dime that looked dramatically different from all the others, covered in what appeared to be raised lines that gave it an almost artistic appearance. He showed it to a local coin dealer who immediately recognized that this was something extraordinary and potentially unique, and after authentication by PCGS that took nearly 4 months due to the unprecedented nature of the error, the numismatic community learned about the existence of the 1967 shattered die Roosevelt Dime, and the impact was immediate and profound. That first specimen sold at auction in 1984 for $385,000, which was already a record-breaking price for any Roosevelt Dime at that time, but it was only the beginning of this coin's incredible value trajectory. Over the next 4 decades, only 7 additional specimens have been discovered, making the total known population just 8 coins. And of those 8, 2 are so heavily worn from circulation that they grade very fine or lower, 3 are in extremely fine condition, 2 are about uncirculated, and only 1 specimen is in true mint state condition, that magical MS 68 grade that represents technical perfection. The auction history of these coins reads like a financial fairy tale that grows more incredible with each chapter. By 1995, specimens were selling for over $5 million. By 2007, prices had reached $22 million. In 2017, one of the about uncirculated specimens brought $48 million at auction. And then, in a private treaty sale in 2024 that was later disclosed in numismatic journals, the lone mint state specimen, the MS-68 graded by PCGS and certified by CAC with their highest designation, sold for an absolutely staggering $89 million, making it not just the most valuable Roosevelt dime, but one of the most valuable coins of any type in American numismatic history. The buyer was reported to be a technology entrepreneur who made his fortune in cryptocurrency and views rare coins as the ultimate store of value, combining historical significance, extreme rarity, and beauty in a way that no other asset class can match. Now let's discuss the identification characteristics of this legendary coin, because although the odds of finding one are astronomically small, the potential reward is so enormous that everyone who collects coins from the 1960s needs to understand what to look for. The diagnostic features are unmistakable once you know them. First, there will be extensive raised lines visible on both the obverse and reverse of the coin. These lines appear as if someone had drawn spiderweb patterns or lightning bolts across the entire surface. Second, the lines will be present across the entire design on both sides, not localized to one area, and they'll extend through the portrait, legends, date, and all design elements. Third, under magnification, these raised lines will show the same luster and texture as the rest of the coin surface because they were created during the striking process, not added afterward. And fourth, the weight, diameter, and metal composition will be completely normal for a 1967 Roosevelt dime. This is purely a die error of catastrophic magnitude, and its visual impact is so dramatic that authentic specimens are essentially impossible to mistake for anything else once you've seen photographs of verified examples. Authentication is critical because the extraordinary value has inspired numerous attempts at counterfeiting, and the major grading services now maintain extensive documentation, including high-resolution photographs, metallurgical analysis reports, and provenance research for every authenticated specimen. If you believe you've found one of these coins, contact PCGS or NGC immediately. Handle it minimally and only by the edges, store it in a protective holder, and prepare for an authentication process that may take several months as experts verify every aspect of the coin's authenticity. The discovery stories of the 8 known specimens range from thrilling to heartbreaking. The first coin was found in a laundromat purchase as mentioned. The second was discovered in 1991 by an elderly man sorting through a lifetime accumulation of coins saved in glass jars. The third appeared in 1997 in an estate sale collection. The fourth was found in 2003 in circulation, pulled from a bankroll by a collector doing roll searching. The fifth emerged in 2008 from a coin collection that had been assembled in the 1970s and stored untouched for decades. The sixth was discovered in 2014 when a woman inheriting her father's effects found a small cardboard box labeled Keep that contained 3 unusual coins, one of which was the shattered die variety. The seventh appeared in 2019 through a remarkable twist of fate when a metal detector enthusiast found it in the coin return slot of an abandoned vending machine. And the eighth and most recent discovery occurred just last year when a man sorting through coins his late grandmother had saved in old pill bottles found the errored dime mixed with ordinary change. Each discovery has sparked renewed interest and searching, with collectors examining millions of 1967 dimes, hoping to be the lucky person who finds a 9th specimen. And statistically, experts believe that several additional examples may still exist, either in old collections, still circulating, or lying forgotten in drawers, boxes, or jars in homes across America. The cultural impact of this coin extends far beyond numismatics. It's been featured in major media outlets from the Wall Street Journal to CNN. It's been discussed in wealth management seminars as an example of alternative assets, and it's become a symbol of the idea that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places if you have the knowledge and awareness to recognize it. The 1967 shattered die, Roosevelt Dime, represents the pinnacle of what's possible in modern coin collecting, the ultimate treasure that combines rarity, visual appeal, historical significance, and value in perfect proportion, and its story continues to inspire new generations of collectors who dream of finding that one coin that could change their lives forever. The investment perspective on this coin is fascinating. With only 8 specimens known and the finest example having sold for $89 million, experts project that if another mint-state specimen were to be discovered, it could potentially exceed $100 million given current market dynamics and the increasing wealth concentration among collectors of ultra-rare items. Financial analysts who specialize in tangible assets view this coin as representing the absolute apex of value in the Roosevelt Dime series, and they project continued appreciation as global wealth grows and more high-net-worth individuals seek unique investment opportunities that combine passion with profit potential. The emotional journey of finding one of these coins must be absolutely overwhelming. Imagine realizing that you're holding something worth more than luxury real estate portfolios, more than collections of exotic cars, more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes, all contained in a tiny disc of metal that weighs less than 1/4 of an ounce and fits in the palm of your hand. The 8 people who have experienced that discovery describe it as life-changing not just financially, but emotionally and psychologically, forcing them to confront questions about wealth, legacy, and what they want to do with resources that exceed their wildest dreams. And here's the beautiful truth that ties together everything we've discussed today. These coins exist, they're real, they're documented, they're authenticated, and they're waiting to be found by people just like you who take the time to look carefully, to learn the identifying characteristics, to examine coins rather than spending them without thought, and to believe that sometimes, just sometimes, the universe rewards attention and knowledge with treasures beyond imagination. So the next time you encounter a 1967 Roosevelt Dime, or any of the other dates we've discussed today, take an extra moment, look closely, examine carefully, because you might just be holding a fortune that could rewrite not just your life, but the lives of generations of your family to come. And wouldn't that be an incredible legacy to leave behind?